Red team go, red team go. How about opening the show with a quote from Half Baked? Yeah.
Or how
There's more
about
coming,
Red
too.
Wire?
Here we go, everybody. Let's do it.
You got a team, here's a word to the wise. You want to dominate your league? Go to football, guys.
Football, I'm living in a fantasy. Football, got everybody mad at me. Football, cause every game I had to win. Football, I gotta be a champion. Football, I'm living in a fantasy.
What? Week 5? Week 5, that's right. We're already here. Blink and you miss it. It is the Week 5 Waiver Wire show here on the Audible. Cecil, Lammey, Sigmund, Bloom, upgrades, downgrades, and Waiver Wire report. It's available at footballguys.com. Injury report, Adam Hutchinson, Monday injury rounds. Got to check that out there. We're all watching the Justin Herbert situation. Of course, the Chargers got some extra time because bye weeks start this week as well, Bloom. So whatever is whatever. Let's just go through the upgrades, downgrades, waiver wire reports available at footballguys.com. And up at the top, and you see him on the beautiful thumbnail, it is CJ Stroud at 15 to 30%. But hot on his heels is Sam Howell at 10 to 20%. So we got a couple of guys there. If you want to throw in Matthew Stafford, he's a 7 to 15%er for you this week.
Yeah.
We'll go ahead and do that too.
Yeah, and I think to start the waiver wire show on the note about bye weeks is a good one. And maybe we dig a little deeper on the quarterback waiver wire, although this week Justin Herbert is really the only truly entrenched starter. And Deshaun Watson, I guess a lot of people drafted to be a starter, maybe Geno Smith. But the bye weeks challenge us. Maybe we do have to go to the waiver wire, at least for depth, depending on our injury situations, if not someone to start. And CJ Stroud, again, folks, I use the Yahoo Public League 60% cutoff if they're owned in 60% of leagues. So Stroud shouldn't be out there, but maybe he is out there. But see, as I always say, this gives us some time to talk about him and lavish some praise on him and Bobby Slowick. And I only had him at 15 to 30% because I mean, CJ Stroud, I don't think he's going to be a league winner. Okay. But remember, this team has been playing without their starting offensive line, without their tackles, who they should get back, a lot of injuries. And this team is improving every week. That's exciting. That points towards even better things. And Texans fans, you can feel good that your ownership got this right. They got the hire right on the coaching staff with D'Amico Ryans, and he's put together a staff. They got the quarterback they wanted. All of a sudden now we're not dunking on them for trading away their first-round pick next year for Will Anderson, who also looks incredible. So C.J. Stroud has been a really steady fantasy quarterback, and there's room for him to grow. Sam Howell, again, improvement, right? And I'm going to include Eric Bieniemy. See, it's hard for me to think of Sam Howell without thinking of Eric Bieniemy. I think that the two of them, I don't want to say their fates are tied together, but as we see one improve, we have to assume the other is also part of that improvement. And we saw against Buffalo that 37-3 loss, and we thought, well, yeah, when you're playing Denver, when you're playing Arizona and eking out a win at home, sure, your offense can look functional, but you saw a good defense, and all of a sudden Sam Howell looked like a fifth-round quarterback. Then you see them play Philadelphia, and Howell is punching and counter-punching with Jalen Hurts. This game goes to overtime, and now you see this team with the ability to unlock the value of the three receivers they have, of the running back combination they have, even Logan Thomas is doing well. And Sam Howell, someone we have to entertain as a startable fantasy quarterback, especially this week against Chicago, to the point where I might preemptively add him if I didn't need a quarterback this week, just to deprive. Look at your opponent. It's a week-to-week situation. See, like you said, it's week 5. We're already about a third of the way into the fantasy football regular season. All right. So if you're playing somebody who has Justin Herbert or Deshaun Watson and Howell's out there on the waiver wire, yeah, maybe you spend some bucks to add him. You might be the one who needs him next week. Who knows? And we see growth here. And then growth is probably coming for Matthew Stafford. His fantasy numbers haven't matched his level of play. Matthew Stafford still obviously very much a quarterback that elevates his offense, that improves his offense, and it was a Cooper Kupp-less offense. Now the Kupp may run it over in fantasy points. It is a matchup against that Philadelphia defense this week, but you're not so much adding Stafford for this week if he's out there, but you're adding him for the weeks that this offense really starts to spread its wings now with the Puka Nacua, Tutu Atwell, and Tyler Higbee, who's staying healthy and doing some stuff as a downfield receiver this year. And then you add Cup. Now we're talking. And I think the other thing that we're looking at here is if you have been, which I think is a reasonable strategy, let the waiver wire be your backup quarterback. Maybe not now that we're into the bye week gauntlet. Not just because, hey, maybe your fantasy quarterback number one might have a week 13 bye or something. Injuries do happen. But it's to deprive other people of these options. So I think that you have to change your approach to quarterbacks on the waiver wire now that we are into the bye week gauntlet, and it really represents a change in thinking. Also, because like you said, Cease, time is running and passing, and the season is a third over.
It's getting biased, so you got to get on top of things and stick to itiveness, which means you might be considering Zach Wilson at 3 to 5%. Heartbreaking with the fumble and his teammates consoling him. Better news on the horizon. He's facing Denver. Nathaniel Hackett's going to have a thing or two to say about Sean Payton. It's the most embarrassing coaching ever. Get beat by 50. Joshua Dobbs, 1%er. Baker Mayfield, 1%er. Taylor Heineke. It's coming, everybody. 1%er there. And then, Mitch Trubisky, I guess, although there's conflicting reports about Kenny Pickett. He's going to miss time. It's a knee. I think my man, James Palmer, who is the coolest guy in the world, by the way. Like, coolest. Frank Schwab's coolest. But James Palmer, number 2 right there. He said it's a bruise. Might not miss any time. So we'll keep our finger on that pulse.
Yeah, we saw with both Derek Carr and now Kenny Pickett, it goes from, well, at least it's not season ending to they might play next week. Okay. That's I mean, not that it matters that much for the Steelers. Zach Wilson. See, he's legitimately improving. Yeah?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's legitimately becoming a better quarterback.
Yep.
And we know why he was drafted number 2. He was drafted number 2 because he does have arm talent. He is an athletic quarterback, and he is a creative quarterback. You know, I feel bad. I don't want to dunk on Kenny Pickett, but that Matt Waldman scouting report in the RSP about Kenny Pickett, about how he would shrink at the end of games, right? Like if you just had the Kenny Pickett you had for the first 3 quarters, 3.5 quarters, then you're good. But the Kenny Pickett, when the game is on the line sometimes, or in these high pressure situations, would let you down. Well, guess what? In the NFL, the screws get tighter. And we saw the same thing with Zach Wilson, remembering that Zach Wilson at BYU in that standout season he had a really good offensive line and was playing against very much inferior competition. So of course he looked good. And the adjustment to the NFL has been difficult. But remember that this Chiefs defense was a limiting factor for fantasy football, and a defense that you really didn't want your fantasy players to be facing. Zach Wilson was fine. What's he going to look like against Denver? In some way, this is a preemptive pickup, even if you don't need Zach Wilson, because next week he is going to be a coveted pickup, and then maybe he'll turn back into a pumpkin. I don't know, but we saw it happen with Justin Fields last week. Maybe Justin Fields will turn back into a pumpkin against Washington on Thursday night. I don't know, but I want to get out ahead of that if it's only going to cost me a few units because everyone has moved on from him. Joshua Dobbs. This is tough. If I knew Joshua Dobbs was going to be the starter for the rest of this season, I might say he's a 10 to 20% pickup because he's doing it against good defenses, against Dallas and San Francisco. This is not Denver and Chicago. He's athletic. He's adding as a runner. He's also using a rookie, Michael Wilson, who we're going to talk about, in addition to Marquise Brown, in addition to Zach Ertz. So you notice how we're not saying they missed DeAndre Hopkins. Isn't that interesting? Right. Isn't that interesting? Joshua Dobbs is a big part of that. And this is another aside, Cease, between Jordan Love and Joshua Dobbs. Do we need to start thinking about, hey, there are just some quarterbacks who maybe need to get to year 3, year 4, year 5 of their career? Maybe Malik Willis will be like this, right? Maybe his second team, he'll get a chance because of an injury, and we'll see, oh, look, remember all those amazing tools that people thought Malik Willis would get in the top 5 even? Now they're emerging because it just takes that long to adjust and really mentally be able to handle what the NFL throws at you as a quarterback. Because Joshua Dobbs is a player we've seen bounce around the league for a while. The Steelers liked him a lot. And now you're seeing him. Cecil looks like one of the best 32 quarterbacks in the league. He looks like he should start. This is like Geno Smith part 2, right? Like
Yep,
he
I
looks
was
like
just going
he
to say
should.
that.
Yeah, he looks like he should start. But Kyler Murray looms for fantasy. So, this week against Cincinnati, not a great matchup for Josh Dobbs. And we're going to see Murray in the next couple of weeks. So that's why I don't have as much enthusiasm about him as a pickup, but I could end up being wrong. Baker Mayfield's on bye. That's why I don't have a lot of enthusiasm. But he actually, if he was playing this week and had a good matchup, might be higher. We'll see if Mike Evans is going to be back after the bye. So there's players here, though, that, again, if you are in a league where you and many other people just use the waiver wire as a backup quarterback, maybe it's time to pluck a Dobbs, pluck a Mayfield. Taylor Heineke, well, Cease, we had it this week where finally you get the kiss of death. Yes, he's starting, Desmond Ridder. So when the coach has to say, yes, he's starting, he's like 3 steps out on the plank, right? Will Houston push him into the water this week? Possibly, likely. And that's why we will talk more about your Falcons players later when you have to make decisions about who to drop, because if Taylor Heineke starts, well, now that's something interesting. And Mitchell Trubisky, that's not something interesting. Maybe he'll start, maybe he won't. Against Baltimore, not a great matchup. And maybe it affects George Pickens' value, but it's just sad. We officially have the most dysfunctional offense in the league. And I think that the blood's on Mike Tomlin's hands because we've seen this team be way too loyal to coaches. And I guess this is kind of the chickens coming home to roost for running Bruce Arians out.
There you go.
Yeah, I still
Everyone
remember.
light a prayer.
I'm still mad.
Say what?
I'm still mad. I'm still mad about that.
Oh, you're still mad. You're still mad. I'm about ready to get mad at your internet. So everyone light a prayer candle for 6 internet.
Oh no.
Yeah, make sure you know how many extra tabs open, Bloom. But we'll continue on the waiver wire report, and you'll calm down, baby. Light and sweet, right? Light and sweet. When Andrew Mason asked me, he's like, "Why do you always say light and sweet?" I said, "I'm angry." Like, light and sweet. It's light and sweet, Bloom. Like, that's how you get through it, right?
Sweet.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. We got this thing. We got this. Running back position is where we go. And it's where we go to talk about injuries. Adam Hutchinson's injury report Monday injury rounds. It's available at footballguys.com. So check it out. And Javonte Williams got a hip injury, looking about a week 7 return. And that means something for the waiver wire. We're going to get to that in just a little bit. But upgrades, downgrades, and waiver wire reports available at footballguys.com. And there he's at the top, but not as much as you would think. 10 to 20% Jaleel McLaughlin, Bloom. Let's talk about this.
Yeah, and really, I want to hear you more than me on this one.
They've been doing stuff in practice they haven't done in games yet, and I can't tell you what they did. I'm probably getting in trouble just for even saying that. But the reason why I was telling everybody about Jaleel McLaughlin, because people on Twitter, like, whatever, I don't even care, but I just bring this up as an example. When you said Jaleel McLaughlin would be blah, blah, blah. You're so wrong. I'm like, I'm telling you what I see at practice. Okay. If they don't do it in games, I don't control that. But Jaleel McLaughlin can flip and play. And pass protection, they don't trust him. I've talked to Jaleel about it. I put out the video clip of it 2 weeks ago of when I asked him about his pass protection. And he's working hard, he's doing good, all those sorts of things. Samaje Perine will be closer to pay dirt. Okay. So touchdown only leagues. Do those still exist, Bloom? Samaje Perine will be the guy they trust closer to pay dirt. Can't tell you exactly where that is, but you get the idea. The primary back will be Jaleel McLaughlin. Now, practice will start tomorrow, and maybe I'll have a different tune. But if we're talking waiver wires on Tuesdays, like, there is a reason, and y'all have seen it. 10 yards carry, like, you all have seen why I was talking about Jaleel McLaughlin. Doesn't mean whatever, but it's just like, all right. They've been working him in. He gets a lot of first-team reps in practice, even when Javonte was healthy. Now he's not, Bloom. So do they actually play him more?
Right. That's the part, the actually part. And would you agree with that timeline? Because immediately Adam Schefter's like, oh, Javonte Williams' injury is not that bad day to day. But you think still he's out until the bye?
Yeah. I mean, they've been kind of babying Javonte anyway. What they also need to do is emphasize the run more. They haven't done that. And they won, so it's just only going to reinforce things. And, of course, they were down against the Bears. But like, all right, if they were to emphasize the run more and let Javonte just get that extra rest, they've got Dwayne Washington. We'll have to see what kind of maneuverings they do there in terms of he's out of the times they can bring him back up off the practice squad already. It's week 5. So, we'll see procedurally. If they bring up Washington to the 53, you're going to know all you need to know about Javonte.
Yeah, so we'll watch that. So there's a lot of ins and outs here. I toyed with a higher number for McLaughlin, maybe as high as 20 to 40% or 25 to 50, if we project him as that rookie that's going to take over the backfield and make the team tear up their plans. I just don't see Sean Payton as that kind of coach. And I just don't see, like you said, Cease, there are certain roles in the offense he's not going to be able to play. And when Javonte's healthy, Javonte's not going to go away. They're not just going to, maybe Samaje Perine has his role shrink. It's very difficult. I mean, there's some this is very fluid, but I think that there are worse things to do than splurge on a young player, undrafted free agent that is showing he deserves to play. It isn't an offense that we don't necessarily trust to have rational coaching, and we don't trust to have fantasy friendly roles. But at this point in the season, especially at running back, somebody who's out there who can play well, I think this conversation makes me want to bump that number up a little bit, if only because Javonte Williams will be out for a week or two. That will mean McLaughlin can do enough to really make them not be able to go back to Javonte Williams in such a large role if he plays like he did last week. And Sean Payton's already said his role is going to grow. So this one's a tough one. And where I think, and see, when we get to shut him down, I mean, that's where it really gets tough, right? Like if you have somebody say, well, I mean, here, Cease, I don't want to put you on the spot. I'll just put it this way, okay? If you only had room for one of Javonte Williams and McLaughlin on your roster, which one?
McLaughlin.
See, well, then maybe that's, you didn't hesitate. So maybe that's the key. Maybe I'll go back and revise that. And maybe we should be a little more aggressive on this one because, this might be the best young running back with a chance for his role to grow on the waiver wire for the rest of the year.
Yeah, and Javonte, it's October 3rd, and I believe it's exactly a year ago that Javonte shredded multiple ligaments in his knee. So he's back, and he played, and they got hurt again. So we'll see. And again, this isn't, I want to finish on this. I know it's a Broncos show, whatever, Bloom, but I want to emphasize this. It's not like Jaleel McLaughlin is now getting work in practice. He's always been getting that, like a lot of first team work. So maybe the team was preparing for this. We shall
that's
see.
Not a yes. See, that's not a Lassie bark. Lassie just came up and said, "Good morning. How are you?"
How's it going? There we go. Can I get some more water? Chuba Hubbard is 5 to 10%. Cam Akers 3 to 5%, and Ronnie Rivers. Let's talk Rams and former Rams, 3 to 5%. So a little mini group here in the middle.
Yeah. Chuba, we have Miles Sanders, that groin. It's been an issue since training camp. He didn't look right. Hubbard had more snaps last week. But what exactly is it worth if Hubbard is a 60-40 leader of this backfield this week against Detroit, the resurgent Detroit defense? I don't know. That's why I'm not as excited. And you notice the drop-off pretty quickly at running back. Maybe that's another reason why I should have been more aggressive on the Monday version of the waiver wire up-down list because there's not a lot out there. The cavalry's not coming. You're looking at, it's only week 5, and we're already looking at injury upside backups, right? Ronnie Rivers and Cam Akers. That's what they are. Cam Akers look pretty good, but he's behind Alexander Madison. Madison has staked his claim to the lead back role. Again, even if that lead back role is a little bit smaller and Cam Akers is showing, he can play, even though he and the Rams had a falling out. And in Akers' stead is Ronnie Rivers, who looked pretty good late in the game and in overtime in the win against the Colts. And I don't want to slight Kyron Williams. I think anybody accomplishing anything in the NFL is a great football player. Anybody. Okay. But his fantasy value is coming because he's competently doing the things they're asking him to do. There are probably running backs that are third string or practice squad, or maybe even some street free agents that if you put them in Williams' role this year, they would produce about the same. Do you think that's a controversial thing to say, Cease?
No, not at all.
So Ronnie Rivers. If Ronnie Rivers is competent, he's in that role, because I don't understand how they expect a 5'9", 194 back to hold up under the load they've given to Kyron Williams. It just doesn't seem possible to me. So Ronnie Rivers is really interesting. Of the two, if I had to pick up one, I'd say it's Rivers, even though Akers has more upside athletically. And it's just because, as we see with running back, sometimes it's just about the offense that you're in, which leads us to the one percenters.
Yeah, there's the one percenters at the running back report, and well, a couple. Jordan Mason and Jeff Wilson. 49ers connections abound in
Yeah.
this. And again, Bloom, I'll go back to what you said. Mike Shanahan did the running back position dirty. I love Mike, consider Mike a friend. His fingerprints are all over this league because of McVay and because of everybody, LaFleur, everybody, McDaniel, everybody's running Shanahan stuff. But what he showed you is I can take a fullback. Reuben Drones had 1,000 yards. Does people remember that? Reuben's a friend, so I say this lovingly.
Yeah.
You know, Tatum Bell, speedster, 1,000 yards. Mike Anderson, converted fullback, 1,500 yards, 1499. But anyway, like, that's why it's like, can you do your job? Well, have I got a job for you?
Yeah, and we'll see if Jeff Wilson's back. So that's another thing for me to just mention. Players that started the season on the PUP list or injured reserve can be, we can start to open that window. Jeff Wilson, one of them, even though Mike McDaniel was pretty grim about the initial prognosis, pretty quickly that got corrected through sources that he could be back in week 5. At the very least, I think he's the goal line back, because he's the best back on the roster for those carries. So that could be worth something. And then injuries happen. Injuries happen to Raheem Mostert. Even Devin Achane came into the year hurt. So you could see it doesn't take. See, we're in that time in the season where a third string running back could be a first string running back over the course of one afternoon. And if it's an offense like Miami, you want to pay attention. Right now, Jordan Mason is the number 2 running back for the 49ers, with Elijah Mitchell hurt. And I love Elijah Mitchell's game. And I think he's another one. There's that Shanahan fit, right? A 6th-round pick, a speedy back, and very productive. He just can't stay healthy. I just think physiologically, his stuff isn't going to hold up in the NFL. They give him 11 carries on a Thursday night. He's hurt. The other question is, again, we are seeing the 49ers using Christian McCaffrey the way you would a player you give up all those picks for. That's great. Can he hold up? Can he hold up over the course of a season? They at least scaled it back a little bit on a Thursday night, but then you come back around again, and he is the engine of this offense, which is rightful. But for fantasy, we have to start to look ahead and say, is it eventually going to spring a leak? Is he going to smoke come out of the hood here? Jordan Mason is clearly ahead of Tyrion Davis-Price, who did have a good summer. So I think Jordan Mason is a player. So at some point this year, we're probably going to talk about him as like a 25 to 50% pickup, right? And we're probably going to say Jordan Mason is a player that could save your season. And depending on, it's the beginning of the bye week gauntlet. So you might not be able to carry a player like Jordan Mason all the way through the bye week gauntlet, but you never know when that McCaffrey injury could come. And if it comes this week against Dallas, then you'll be happy you had Mason at the end of your bench.
Yeah, you will be happy unless you have these wide receivers who are banged up as we get to the wide receiver position. And that's pretty thick on the Monday injury rounds. Adam Hutchinson, of course, footballguys.com. Got a few to talk about. T. Higgins with a rib fracture, projecting week 8 return. Mike Evans, hamstring injury, projecting week 6 return. Devontae Adams should be okay, a little bit of a shoulder thing. So check that out and check out the Monday injury round that's available at footballguys.com. And check out Sigmund's upgrades, downgrades, and waiver wire report. Romeo Dobbs up at the top, 10 to 20%. Bloom, let's talk about him. Curtis Samuel and Michael Wilson, one of my favorite players at the Senior Bowl and one of my favorite receivers down there this year. Standout player who had a breakout game. He's a 7 to 15%er for you this week.
Yeah, there's some more help coming at wide receiver than there is at running back. Dobbs may or may not be out there. He's been up and down, up in a bad game for the Packers. And Cecil, you've been saying it since early in the summer. That's your number 1 receiver for this team. Now, the number 1 receiver in fantasy drafts, Christian Watson, was back, but he was on a snap count. Aaron Jones was back, but he was on a snap count. What will this offense look like in terms of target distribution? Because it is going to remain by its nature a low volume passing offense. even though the defense wasn't bad against the Lions. The Lions just kind of jumped out on them. So you don't expect a lot of 40 pass attempt games from Jordan Love, but it still might be just fine if he zeroed in on Romeo Doubs the way we saw him on Thursday night and the way we've seen him in the red zone at times. Also, you've got Michael Wilson, and Wilson is a real interesting guy because you got to remember that because of injuries, he barely played at Stanford over the last few years, but he was also a good enough player when he was healthy that he was a third-round pick. And the Cardinals immediately getting him on the field. Again, nobody's talking about how much they're missing DeAndre Hopkins, right? They just outright released him. They didn't even get anything for him. And Michael Wilson with the 2 touchdowns, we saw him have a big play 2 weeks ago in a busted coverage. Now we're seeing him really with that chemistry with Joshua Dobbs, and he's a good wide receiver. He's a polished wide receiver. He's more like a veteran than a typical young receiver in terms of how he plays the position. And that's with Marquise Brown still having a good game too. So you're pretty excited about what Wilson can offer. And by the way, Kyler Murray coming back could improve this offense across the board. Washington, we've already talked about their offense improving in week 4. Curtis Samuel. Now, Jahan Dotson had a little ankle issue, but it seems like he's going to be okay. But still, now, if we were talking about Dotson's ankle potentially keeping him out this week, because it is a short week, so maybe it will anyway, then we'd be talking about Curtis Samuel's even higher priority pickup. So maybe Samuel should be higher. But you saw on a jet sweep, the Eagles they look like the Broncos. They look like they'd never seen a jet sweep at the goal line in their life. Jet sweeps aren't supposed to work at the goal line unless it's college and you're playing Colorado School of Mines or something, right? And it worked against the Eagles defense with Curtis Samuel, who we know is fast. Mm-hmm. And you see Sam Howell improving this pass offense along with Eric Bieniemy, and Curtis Samuel can play. So this week, if Samuel's on the waiver wire, I would try to get him right into my lineup against those Chicago Bears.
Yeah, Bloom, would you like to smile, my friend? Would you like something to brighten up your day?
Yeah, there's some 5 to 10%ers that are brighten up some days that didn't make this at press time, by the way.
They will make it there as well. Bloom, not during the show.
Okay.
I need you here, baby. Google the team photos for the School of Mines.
I saw. They're great.
Did you see them?
That is exactly, as I was pulling them out of the ether for that reference, I had those pictures in my mind. So everybody out there, the Colorado School, what beautiful Colorado village is the Colorado School of Mines in?
It's in Golden.
Nice.
Yeah. So just round the bend here from me, and
is that where Coors is too?
And they're engineers, and they've got crazy team photos.
That's great.
So
I love it. I mean, with the team photos should be an opportunity to show your personality, not to try to look just like everybody else.
Right. Football, you don't show your personality. Okay. 3 to 5% for Alan Lazard. We're seeing it come together as Zach Wilson improves. There you go. And then throw in Braxton Berrios as a 1%er here towards the bottom of the list.
Right. And some 5 to 10%ers that didn't make it at press time. Jameson Williams, I guess, because the NFL changed their mind about suspension.
He's got to show it first, man. And I hate to
be
that, because I loved him. He's my number 1 receiver, but he's been so disappointing. I'm like, I don't have any Jameson, even in my dynasty leagues anymore.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, this is kind of like the Quentin Johnston pickup, right? Last week, which may be back to the waiver wire this week, is because the physical tools are there and the opportunity will be there for them to get their foot in the door, even though we don't believe, and it doesn't seem like the team even believes, that they're ready to do that yet. And then Wan'Dale Robinson, the struggle targets, right? Struggle targets. Boy, the Giants are struggling. But Wan'Dale Robinson is looking healthier than we expected him to be 4 weeks into the season, and he's that short-range target. So he might be somebody that can help you out as we go through the bye week gauntlet. Al Lazard had a long touchdown. Zach Wilson's getting better. Maybe there's something there. This week, who do the Jets play? Denver. That's right. Again, Denver. So if you had to throw someone in, because Amari Cooper's on bye, Keenan Allen's on bye, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, DK Metcalf, right? Tyler Lockett. Depending on the size of your bench or how you feel about your bench wide receivers, you might need to go to the bench to get a wide receiver. to the waiver wire to get a wide receiver over your bench guys. And what did Cecil tell us early in the season? Well, Pat Surtain is still going to be really good, but the other guys, so he's going to be on Garrett Wilson, right? The other guys, that's who you want to look at. That's Alan Lazard this week. So Alan Lazard could be a 1 week special for you. And then Braxton Berrios, Eric Ezukanma, still a fascinating player to me in dynasty leagues on the NFI. River Craycraft, just love saying his name, on IR. So now you have Braxton Berrios kind of standing alone, although there's still Robbie Chosen, one Anderson, and there's still Cedric Wilson on this roster. But Berrios had 6 catches, had a touchdown last week. And if teams, so you've seen in an interesting contrast, the AFC East teams, the teams that are familiar with Mike McDaniel's offense, are actually holding it down. I mean, they beat the Patriots again, but it wasn't like Tua put on an air show with Tyreek and Jalen Waddle in that game. And then we saw what the Bills did to them last week. So maybe Berrios is that guy that we have on our bench and we plug in when we think this offense is going to have a hard time making the downfield plays. Now, this week it's the Giants, so maybe not so much this week, but that's why Berrios is a 1%er, because he's someone you use in spots, again, especially as we go through the bye week gauntlet.
Now let's go through the tight end position and the Monday injury rounds. Oh, Steelers. I got to talk about the Steelers again. Mike Tomlin, you're not going to be 500 or above this year, buddy, because Matt Canada's there. Anyway, Pat Freiermuth, the tight end. Check out the Monday injury rounds. The report is available at footballguys.com. Adam Hutchison, thank you very much. Sigmund Bloom's upgrades, downgrades, and waiver wire report is available at footballguys.com as well. And there you see him. Perhaps they figured something out. They didn't figure out how to win, but perhaps they figured out something with Cole Kmet. Before we get to the rest of the guys, I think Kmet and what he did last year should alert you to what we already seen from Justin Fields. Like, he struggled and then he got it. And then from fantasy purposes, it was great. What did they have, like a 16-game losing streak, whatever it is? Like, okay, with the Bears, Fields has struggled. Maybe they got it. And Cole Kmet was a part of that.
Yeah, when Fields was feeling more comfortable in the second half of the year, that was his guy in the red zone. That was his touchdown guy. And we saw that against Denver with the 2 touchdowns, and not just the 2 touchdowns. He had 7 for 85. So it wasn't just the 2 touchdowns. So I think that this is something, maybe Tyler Conklin, we'll talk about him because that's who Denver is facing this week at tight end, because Cole Kmet had that big bounce back week. But again, and I think that this is another moment to take a step back and contextualize not just the waiver wire pickups, but also the players that we're thinking about as shut them downs, or the players we're having to tell you to hold on to. Is some of these players, it's just that rising or falling tide of the offense. And you have the counter guys, like as the offense gets worse, Wan'Dale Robinson can get more targets. But for the most part, waiver wire pickups aren't just driven by player performance. It's driven by offensive performance, and to an extent, matchups in the window for how long you need someone to produce for you. So we're talking about the Jets a lot. We're talking about Washington a lot, right? As these quarterbacks, as these offenses start to outperform expectations, Houston, then we need to adjust expectations for everybody in the offense. I think that absolutely applies to Cole Kmet here. And I mean, we'll see against Washington on Thursday night, an island game. Everyone's going to get to watch this offense. The Washington defense is not one that we're afraid of. So if it's not just Denver, Kmet should be able to keep it going this week.
Yeah, there you go. Wait a second here. PC says it's
PC's
his birthday.
Yeah.
Every day.
Every day. That's a good song, by the way.
He tricked us, because now if you say that, we got to play this. What's
Yeah.
it? That's a song, Bloom?
No, Mr. PC. It's a great John Coltrane song. Paul Chambers, who I think was on the all-time Island classic. Like, you only have one album to listen to. It should be Kind of Blue. Anyway, Mr. PC, happy birthday every day. Is it his birthday? It doesn't matter. It should be his birthday every day.
Yes. Here we go down the tight end list. And I'm like Pavlov's dogs. If someone says every day and I see it, I'm going to put up Vic Fangio every day. You need tight end help seemingly every day. And there's Ferguson. Notice how I didn't say Ferg Hendershot, Schoonmaker, whatever. What are we calling him? Schoon Hendershot. Ferguson. It's Jake Ferguson by himself. Like by
Yeah.
himself. He's separating from the
Yes.
pack, from the others that are just like him. Tyler Conklin is 3 to 5%. Jonu Smith is a 1%er, but we have to talk. And I imagine this will come up in our next two segments and perhaps in the Wilson Phillips segments. The Falcons offense can change with Taylor Heineke. It can change a lot for those
Yeah.
pass catchers. So Jonu Smith, 1%er, and then we're going to keep talking Falcons here because stuff's about to change.
Cecil, this is great. I mean, I don't even have to do this, right? Because that was going to be the setup was Houston, Chicago, Washington, right? As the quarterback play gets better, these offenses get better. These offenses are better at doing the things they intend to do. What is in the cards for Atlanta if they get that quarterback change we talked about in the quarterback segment? But in the tight end segment, we still need to talk about Ferguson, who got 7 targets, caught all 7, 11 yards a target. And I just think we need to consider that Dallas, and it may not, and this is what's hard sometimes treating fantasy football as the week-to-week endeavor that it is, because teams and defenses might set out to take away CD Lamb, but which defenses are good enough to do it? Which defenses have the personnel and game plans to do it? Well, Arizona, a surprising defense, hey, Jonathan Gannon, they were able to do it. And then, of course, Bill Belichick was able to do it. Bill Belichick's always able to at least do that, at least accomplish that. I guess he'll take away Chris Olave this week. So maybe look at your New Orleans secondary pass catchers, right? So you take away CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, who's had 2 good weeks in a row, assuming he's not on the waiver wire. That's why he wasn't on the show today. And Jake Ferguson, who may be out there. So I think that these are the guys that Dak Prescott's going to look to, not Brandon Cooks, at least not yet, if CeeDee Lamb continues to be covered and force Prescott to go elsewhere. Tyler Conklin already mentioned against Denver. Also, you see some chemistry. Really nice throw on the move that Zach Wilson made to him. And he had some decent games with Zach Wilson last year. So, and again, with the Jets offense, maybe it's a buy low moment for Breece Hall. That comes out on Thursday, my buy low, sell high. And then Johnny Smith. And again, I just have to say, this is the fantasy. If you take fantasy football too seriously, the fantasy gods do something like this. And they say, Jonnu Smith is worth more than Kyle Pitts. Not that Jonnu Smith's a bad player, but I think you're right, Cease, that this is a week-to-week thing. That's why he's a 1%er. I'm not even sure. Yeah, I guess someone said Jonnu Smith or Kyle Pitts. I just can't do it, Kyle Pitts. But Jonnu Smith has some value right now. And we'll see what happens next week with the Falcons, and we'll see who it's time to cue the Chuck D on.
Right. That is correct, Bloom. And the one thing about this is teams send messages with how they play players. If Kyle Pitts hears the message and he responds in the way they want him to respond, then he will flourish. But remember the dirty word in the NFL, it's fit. So does Kyle Pitts fit what they want to do? Not yet. Doesn't mean he can't. Doesn't mean he won't. But if he does, it'll be awesome. All right. It'll be awesome as we move through all of our daily conversations. And listen, it's week 5. I still can't believe that it's week 5. Okay, right on. October, calendar turns. Leaves are changing. The aspens are beautiful up here in Colorado, Bloom. You should come to Colorado so you could see the lovely aspen trees. That's correct. That's right, everybody. So yeah, as the cold temperatures get here, as things change in your fantasy season, well, sometimes you have to force the change. You got to make it change. And that's why this next part, where I want all of us to chip in here, because this is we're all in this together, right? So I need you. Sigmund needs you in this next part. So much so, you can't have a rally cap with a bucket hat, can you, Bloom? Like,
Well,
if you just turn around, it just looks the same.
I can just do it like this, make it look like the sailor hat. I could try doing something like putting it sideways. Rally caps are great. That's a baseball thing. See, you just did a baseball thing.
I know.
Do it, on my head like this, like upside down.
I just did a baseball thing.
We need to put our rally caps on for our fantasy. Well, that's like a week 12 thing.
Right. We need to put the rally cap on, and I want you to scream this with me. I don't care if you're in the office. I don't care if you're at home. I don't care if you're at church. I don't care if you're at the doctor's office. I don't care where you're at. When you're listening to this, you have to get along with our audience participation, because there's just some players that you got to scream it to the heavens. Cue the Chuck D. Bloom, week 5, shut them down.
Yeah. Who we shutting down? It's getting to that time where you might have to shut down some players you don't even want to because of the bye weeks. But you're shutting down Kenny Pickett, injury or no injury, Desmond Ridder. Derek Carr, what are we waiting around for? Really? Seriously. At running back, Kendry Miller with Alvin Kamara looking as good as he is. Jamal Williams will be back in a few weeks. Samaje Perine's tough. I think that the window is going to close for Perine when Javonte Williams is back, but that might only be not for 2 or 3 weeks. Perine's not an essential hold, even though against the Jets, I don't know if he's going to score. We talked about Javonte Williams. You know, if it's Javonte Williams to get McLaughlin, if it's Javonte Williams, maybe even to get like Cole Kmet, if it's Javonte Williams to get a CJ Stroud, if it's Javonte Williams, if that's who you have to drop, then don't clutch onto him too tightly. What do you think? And Roschon Johnson is in the same category with Khalil Herbert roaring back in week 4. Roschon Johnson still could matter, but as we go through the bye week gauntlet, if you're saying I can get Jaleel McLaughlin, but I have to drop Roschon Johnson, Cecil, would you co-sign on that one? McLaughlin for Johnson?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm just saying these are guys that we're not saying just drop them and pick up somebody else. Now, here's one, Cecil, for you. The Steelers backs. I'm ready to say toss in the terrible towel on those guys. Now, I'm not saying for just anybody, but again, if you're saying, well, I can get McLaughlin, but I have to drop Najee Harris or Jalen Warren, or I can get Cole Kmet, or I can get Romeo Doubs, or I can get CJ Stroud, but I have
back to what you said earlier, Bloom. You're investing in offenses. Like the Broncos offense is better than the Steelers offense, and who would have thought that?
Right. So yeah, that's just where we are. It's painful. Who would have thought the Achilles heel of the Steelers would be that their coach is just too loyal to guys on his staff that aren't getting the job done? Same thing has been happening on defense at times, but he's the defensive coach. Nelson Aguilar, this is just going to remain, Cecil, I thought it was kind of premature to say, oh, the Ravens offense is just going to remain basically the same, even with Todd Monken. But yeah, it is. It's basically the same. It's going to be a low volume passing offense, but Lamar Jackson's finishing drives. DJ Chark, I'm basically ready to cut for just about anyone but 1%ers, just because it's Bryce Young. Quentin Johnson, I'm ready to cut for just about anyone except 3 to 5%ers, maybe 5 to 10%ers. I think that's about the line, 5 to 10%ers. If you said you can carry Quentin Johnson or pick up Wan'Dale Robinson, or like I said, Quentin Johnson and Jamison Williams, they're very similar. And Rashid Shaheed, I love him, but I just don't know with this pass offense if he's going to be consistent for us. Pratt Freiermuth, again, the Steelers, maybe it's just I'm bitter. And Luke Musgrave, man, it was a smash spot. And Josiah DeGuara, he was the 3rd round pick of the Love Dillon draft. He had 4 catches in that game. So I think the matchup was right. It was ripe. But Musgrave suffered a concussion. How big is Musgrave's role going to be if the Packers have everybody on board and a full snap count? I'm not sure. So, I might drop a Musgrave for a Michael Wilson. I might drop a Musgrave for a Curtis Samuel. That's about where I am with Musgrave, even though we might revisit him and in a couple of weeks say, pick him back up.
Pick him up, right?
Yeah.
By the way, Reynard's wife asked if he was okay. See, and that's the thing. Like Chuck D would just check in on people, right? Are you paying attention?
See, every time my wife, the love of my life, Kate, she asks me if I'm okay. Like, there's some reason to ask me if I'm okay. I'm like, well, I feel the way I felt for most of my life. Maybe that's not okay. Maybe I've never been okay, but I feel like myself.
Right. I always like to throw people off when they say, "How you doing today?" I go, "Day still punching."
Yeah. So, well, my favorite one is on the right side of the dirt.
Exactly. So just check in. Yeah. Reynard, you got to keep her because she's checking in. Like she's yelling to the Chuck D, and she cares. She's like, "What happened?"
Who did the country? She thinks I still care. I didn't realize
Okay.
that's a classic though.
That is a classic country song. There's a classic song that we have to get to when it's the flip side of cueing the Chuck D. And there's some of these players, Bloom, you just said the word love.
Mhm.
There's some of these players you love, and that means you can't let them go, which that means you have to hold on. And who are those players in week 5?
And this is tough. George Jones. Of course it was George Jones. I can't believe I didn't know it was George Jones.
It's always
I'm
George
embarrassed. I'm really, really embarrassed that I didn't automatically know it was George Jones. This is the tough part to hold on. And again, I want to say emotion belongs in fantasy football. And if some of these players that I might say, hold on, you're saying, I don't care about the fantasy football strategy. I'm done. I just don't want to look at this player name on my roster. I don't want to think about whether to start them. I don't want to deal with them anymore. I get that, but maybe there's a reason to hold on. Joe Burrow, I think, is a hold at this point. You're waiting. Probably after the week 7 bye, you're waiting. But I think that we will probably see it's Joe Burrow. He'll matter for fantasy football eventually. Deshaun Watson is probably a hold also. His shoulder issue was a hit that he took. Now, I might be a little concerned that they will say you're running even less, even though he was barely running because of that. But I think he should be fine after the bye. So hold on to him as he was actually producing pretty well, surprisingly, through the first 3 weeks. At running back, Jerick McKinnon. Okay. Now, again, someone said I can get Jaleel McLaughlin, but I have to drop Jerick McKinnon. I mean, it's hard. You're holding Jerick McKinnon for December. You're holding Jerick McKinnon for the games they need to get the number 1 seed and how they'll use him more. So I just feel like you break ties in favor of McKinnon, although if it was him or I have to drop him to get McLaughlin. That is tough. See, some McLaughlin or McLaughlin?
It's McLaughlin.
McLaughlin. See, I say McLaughlin because of the great John McLaughlin, my favorite guitarist. A wide receiver, I think George Pickens is a hold. I think he's a hold because the Kenny Pickett injury is not as bad as feared. And he came alive last year when Pickens was put in, when Pickett to Pickens, that came alive with rookie Pickett. I think Jerry Jeudy's a hold. Here's the Cecil. Can you talk about some things you can't talk about?
Yeah, he is. He's getting healthier, and remember, Sean Payton loves him.
Yeah,
Sean Payton will force it to him. And Marvin Mims is still a hold.
Yes,
and you're just gonna have to wait. And did I tell you, Bloom? I don't know if I told you.
what's that?
If this
Yeah.
team runs the ball more, I think I said it on Twitter. If this team runs the ball more, it means more Mims. As weird as that may seem,
Yes.
sets up
No,
those downfield shots.
it's great that you've laid this out, Cease, because I think that it's difficult for people sometimes to understand that they have players who come alive when the offense is imposing its will on the opposition and in the game plan. And when Denver's behind 28-3, 28-7, they're not in their offensive game plan. So you're right. It's going to take success on offense to really start to amplify Marvin Mims. And then the last thing I'll add to this, because we have to start looking forward to this, right? Benjamin Solak, he's awesome. Benjamin Solak is like, he's like our little brother that's smarter than us, right? And he said,
We got a few of those, man. Adam Harstad comes to mind, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, little bro, you're way too smart.
You're way too smart. And he said, I'm thinking about Devontae Adams, the Lion. He said, I'm thinking about Patrick Surtain, the Raven. And I'm thinking about Cortland Sutton. Where's Cortland Sutton going to be? And he says, there a greater than 0% chance that Sutton is traded or Judy is traded?
I'd almost put money on it.
So that's another reason to hold on to Judy. You're probably holding on to Sutton because he has 3 touchdowns.
Well, and we could have a different waiver wire show maybe in a week, or at least sprinkle some of these in because there's trades coming. And the trade deadline, I believe, is Halloween. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Right.
And I believe Halloween's on a Tuesday. So I think we get to dress up.
Nice.
There you go. So anyway, like there's a waiver wire where it's like, yeah, the guy hasn't done anything. Hey, whatever, Jerry Jeudy. But Jerry Jeudy on a different team.
Right.
How's that look?
Right. right? Or Jerry Jeudy with Cortland Sutton on a different team, and Marvin Mims, and so on and so forth. So this is something you should be thinking about, right? By the way, I got to get like some big styrofoam seats because I think the Halloween costume this year for New Orleans is going to be the salt wedge, the wedge of salt water that's coming up the Mississippi to take away our drinking water supply. It's coming. Someone did a heavy metal style fall tour shirt showing all the spots with like the old English writing, salt wedge fall destruction tour up the Mississippi River.
Okay.
It's coming, but the trade deadline is also coming, and we, much like the salt wedge, we can see it coming, and we can start to look at teams and think about the players that are going to be available and what kind of changes that can create in fantasy value. Dallas Goedert's a hold. Don't do anything rash here. I know he hasn't got a touchdown yet. After all, and boy, this has been a rough year for preseason hype and training camp hype because he was supposed to be the red zone specialist, and he has that skill set. So I'm not giving up on Goddard, and no, I'm not giving up on Kyle Pitts. And just keep this in mind, okay? Tight end has such a low bar of fantasy relevance. And like Cecil has told us with windows, even it might be just a 3 or 4 week window where these guys heat up. But that could be the difference between you making the playoffs and not making the playoffs, because just like every other year, there's 7, 8, 9 tight ends that we think are going to be solid every week plays. And then the season starts and there's like 3 or 4. So everybody's out in the cold at tight end, and you need to not let them get a gift by dropping a Pitts or dropping a Goddard. But with Pitts, I understand if you're going to do it emotionally, lots of emotions. That's what we're here. We're here to help you regulate them, sort through them, and live with them.
And live with them. P90 Camper asked about Daniel Jones. Is he a hold on for you?
I think that he's got to be a hold on because we saw what he did in a half against Arizona. I guess I should have added him to the holds because it's from last night's game. We saw what he did in just a half. So this is the fantasy paradox of Daniel Jones, right? He runs for over 60 yards. He completes 27 of 34 passes, and he's a terrible fantasy quarterback. And it makes it so you can't even really play him against Miami this week. But look around here. Saquon Barkley's been out. That makes a difference. How much easier is it to defend the Giants if Saquon Barkley's not out there? The offensive line's in shambles. He took 10 sacks last night. That's not all on Daniel Jones. And say what you will about Daniel Jones and his flaws, and Matt Waldman has been very good at chronicling them since before he was drafted number 6 overall. He goes down swinging. Isn't that what you want in a fantasy quarterback, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So, again, you look at that Miami matchup next week, you think, yeah, Daniel Jones, shootout. Ugh. Now I don't know if you can stomach playing Daniel Jones. Let's see if Saquon Barkley is going to be back or not. But at some point, Wan'Dale Robinson's getting healthier. They're using Jalen Hyatt more. Barkley is going to be back. Darren Waller, they can start figuring out. He's another hold. He's another one. There's a chance for this offense to get it together. Brian Dable he didn't just luck into what happened last year. Daniel Jones didn't just luck into what happened last year. They are rowing upstream against a lot of negative conditions in that offense right now. In a few weeks, they might not be, and then Daniel Jones becomes a 25, 30, 35 point quarterback play. I don't want to just gift that to somebody. Now, if I have to drop Daniel Jones to get a McLaughlin, if I have to drop Daniel Jones, if you're asking me, do I rather have Daniel Jones or CJ Stroud now? Yes. But if you're saying, would you rather have Daniel Jones or Sam Howell? I think it's premature to say that, because Jones just has he has a ceiling to win your week for you, like he already did once this year.
And he could do it again. Your nobody called today. She hung up when I asked her name. But I wonder, does she think she's being clever? Anyway, nobody says JSN shut down.
Yeah, I think you got it. I mean, it's
What
just
do
there's
I love
there's
the
certain
talent.
rookies. It's not there yet.
Just gotta wait. Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. Kendre Miller, Quentin Johnston, like we talked about some of these rookies where the time could come, but if they're not showing something right away, chances are they're not just going to figure it out in 1 or 2 weeks.
Right. And they still got the veterans above them getting it done. So again, Quentin Johnston, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. Then look at Michael Wilson, right? Look at how that's looking different. Look at what you have, with the young receivers in Indianapolis behind Michael Pittman. Anyway, Bloom, I love that people can come to the show and get weird with us. You want to get nuts?
Yeah.
Let's get nuts.
Yeah. let's get nuts, because it's fantasy football and we're trying to win and we're trying to be ahead of the curve, but also we just like spending time together. And I want to say again, I want to try to say this as many times as I can this year and every year, that it is special. It is special that now at this moment, 234 people, maybe they just have a tab open. They're not even listening to us. I don't know. Not all 234, but 234 people right now are taking time out of their day to let us in their heads and share and spend time with us. And that is just so validating. And I feel so much love and I feel so much acceptance and an embrace of our community, and thousands more that will be listening to this podcast. And that's special. It's special that you make time for us, and that in this one life you have, you spend some of that time with us. So we want to deliver something that at the very least makes you feel more human, maybe even leaves you with a smile on your face, or make people think you're as weird as you really are, because we're all weird.
Yes, we're all weird. Find your people. You're our people. Mahai Luke says, good morning from Lakewood. Lakewood up to no good. That's right. See, Bloom, if you move to Denver, we could have a morning show.
Lots of
right?
inside jokes, yeah.
Ass crack and ball sack. It's mayhem in the AM. That's right. Sorry, Joe. Do I have to say sorry, Joe, for ass crack? I suppose
Not
I do.
anymore.
Hey, buddy, can you stop talking about people's butt cracks?
Right.
There we go. All right, that's a wrap, everybody. Thank you all for coming out and joining us. Help us grow the YouTube channel as you've done. Like, comment, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you never miss a vid. He's Sigmund Bloom. You follow him on Twitter at Sigmund Bloom. I am at Cecil Lammey. The show is at The Audible, and we love you. Check out footballguys.com. You want to support the show? That's the way you do it. And I'm going to go do it. Thank you all. Thank you for jumping in the chat room. Thanks to Sigmund. Thanks to Cecil. I just went third person. It's always time to stay tuned. And would you please stay frosty,